Alcohol can lead to great times, but it can also lead you to awful situations. And boy, do I relate. Today I've got two stories for you from the first year of university, but before I get into that, the goal for today's video is to get back in the mine and get some resources. I'm hoping for diamonds, but let's be realistic, that's probably not gonna happen. The first story is from the beginning of the year and the second story is at the very end of the year. If you guys didn't watch my first few videos, I mentioned how I moved from Thailand to the UK for university. And as the story is from the very beginning of university, oh, my pickaxe just broke. It meant that I didn't even have a bank account set up yet and I just moved into the city, so I had no idea how to get around. So the story begins with one of my friends from another university coming to visit me. He's more of the main character in the story, so I'm gonna give him a name. Let's call him Brian. So Brian and I decide to start drinking in my room because that's what university students do. All they do is drink. And after a couple drinks, we decided, you know what, let's hit the city and let's go to a bar. Once we got to the bar, we kept drinking, and once it hit 11 PM, we were feeling a bit tipsy. And we both looked at each other and decided, let's go hit the club. We both made our way to the club, and the first thing we did at the club was obviously drink some more. I think at the time our choice of drink was Jaeger bombs because it's honestly the cheapest option at that club. I don't want to admit how much we actually drank, so let's just say we had a healthy amount of Jaeger bombs. This led us to both getting very drunk, and I was having a great time. But when I looked over at my friend Brian, he didn't look too well, and he started signaling to me that he wanted to leave. I asked why and he just said he wasn't feeling well, so I thought to myself, he looks functional, and he's a British guy, so he already had a bank account set up and he knew his way around. So I was like, this will be perfect for us to get home safe. But boy was I wrong. As we left, he handed me his phone and said, yo, record me bro. And I said sure, so I took his phone and started recording. At the time we were outside a bookshop and Brian decides, you know what, I'm just gonna go punch the window, and he starts punching the window. And then he starts doing some unholy things to the window that I don't want to mention. But just let your mind run free and I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. I entertained it for a little bit, then I told him, I think it's time for you to call an Uber. So I handed him his phone back and he said, no, you call it, I'm way too fucked for this. So I called the Uber on his phone and we get into the Uber. Everything is fine until Brian asks the Uber driver if he can throw up outside the window. And the Uber driver did not take that well. He got so angry at us and just started saying, get out of the car now. And we were surprised because Brian hadn't thrown up yet or anything. He just asked the question. It's obviously the Uber driver's car. We have to listen to him. His car, his rules. So we leave. The next logical thing to do was just call another Uber. We were in the middle of nowhere and Brian decided to lie down on the street. This wasn't the main road, but it connected to the main road, so a car could have came. But luckily it was around 2 AM, so no cars were around. The thing is though, no one else was around as well. So I tried getting Brian off the ground, but he wasn't willing to budge and he said, nah, let me stay, I literally cannot move. And I thought he was joking with me, but he genuinely did not want to get up. And don't forget, I was very drunk too, so I was finding this hilarious. I just couldn't stop laughing and I was just taking pictures of him until I heard a voice that said, do you need help? And we were completely alone. And the voice was coming from above us, so in my drunk state, I probably thought it was God or something. So I was looking around panicking. And then I heard the voice again, and then I spotted two girls at a window, and they just wanted to help. So I was like, oh yes, please, we actually do need help. So after a couple minutes, they decided to come down. So I told them what happened and just told them that Brian was way too drunk. But they thought the situation was way more serious. They were adamant that Brian was seriously unwell and an ambulance was needed. I kept trying to reassure them that he's completely fine and he's just way too drunk. But they wouldn't believe me, and they weren't listening to me, so Brian thought it was a great idea to start swearing at them in Thai. He was on the floor, mind you, just looking up at the girls and just screaming at them in Thai, and it was all swear words. And I couldn't keep it in. I was absolutely losing it. I was laughing so hard. So the girls knew something was up. So they obviously asked me, what is he saying? And I tried to keep the straightest face possible, and I think I succeeded. I said, he's just trying to thank you guys, and he's saying how grateful he is. And they obviously didn't believe me at first because Brian started chuckling. But I reassured them that's exactly what he's saying. And they responded by just saying like, oh yeah, no worries. We're just here to help, of course. So while Brian was just screaming at them in Thai, he just wouldn't stop. They decided it's time to call the ambulance. So they did. But lucky for us, they weren't willing to send us an ambulance because they didn't see it as an emergency. The girls were a bit annoyed from this, but they said the next best thing we can do is call a taxi. So they gave us the taxi number and told me to call them. I handed them my phone and I just said, please do it. I have no idea where we are. So they were kind enough to call the taxi for us, and we waited maybe 15 minutes and the taxi finally came. Once the taxi came, the same exact thing happened with the Uber where Brian asked if he can throw up. But this time the driver was super chill and he said, it's fine, just don't get any puke on the car. So Brian starts throwing up and we eventually make it to my accommodation. But the way my accommodation is laid out is you have to get out of the car and there's a land of grass and then it's the accommodation. That's about a 2 minutes walk. Actually, I could be exaggerating here. It might be a 1 minute walk. But for us, it took us almost 30 minutes to get to the accommodation. And this was because Brian fell back on the floor and was just throwing up once again. So I picked him up, put his arm around my shoulder and walked him to my accommodation. We got to the front of my door and this is now around 4 a.m. He collapses back onto the floor and I opened the door to my room and I can't stop laughing, and the walls are super thin here, so we were probably waking everyone up. I felt so bad, but I was super drunk as well, so I just couldn't stop laughing. And Brian crawled all the way into my room and just lied on the floor. I said, you good, bro? He's like, yeah, I'm good, bro. I'm just gonna sleep here for the night. So I handed him my pillow and I got into bed. Not even 10 minutes later, he goes, yo, you awake, bro? And I was like, yeah, I'm awake. And he goes, I'm sorry, bro, but I threw up all over your floor. My floor was carpeted back then, by the way. And at the time, I just did not care. I just said, whatever, we'll figure it out tomorrow. When we woke up, we realized he threw up on the pillow as well, which wasn't amazing, but whatever, it is what it is. I then asked him if he remembers anything. And he said, oh yeah, my hand hurts. And I was like, yeah, so you punched the bookshop. And he was like, yeah, you know what? Makes sense. And we both were super hungover, so we were just sitting there in silence, scrolling through Instagram. Brian stumbled upon a post on his friend's Instagram, and the post was an artist I liked performing, and we found out that the artist was performing at the club we were at before we left. And I was so annoyed, and Brian till this day teases me about that. So that was the first story. The second story is based at the very end of the year, as I said. And this was the last day of university and I was moving out. I had a flight back home in a couple days and the flight was from London. My university isn't in London. So I had a train to catch the next day. And me and a friend agreed on meeting at this specific time, which I think was about 3 p.m. in London. So I was moving my stuff out and I was moving my stuff out to one of my friend's house. Why do I feel like I can't step on this stuff? What the hell is this, man? Nah, bro. What is that sound? I don't know what those sounds were. That was spooky as hell. Yeah, so I was moving my stuff into a friend's house and once I finished, it was around 10 p.m. So I told my friend, thanks for helping me move, but I'm gonna go home now. And he said, no, I helped you, so you're gonna have to listen to me. And I said, okay, what's up? What are you thinking of? And he said, we're going on a night out. And I was like, oh, come on, bro, no. He persuaded me by saying, it's my birthday in a few days. My birthday was gonna be in London and he wouldn't be there, so he's like, we're gonna have to celebrate it. So I was like, you know what? My train's at 1:30 or something. I'll make it. There's nothing down here, bro. Yeah, my train was at 1:30, so even if worse comes to worse, I was like, there's no way I missed the train. So I said, you know what? Sure, let's go on this night out. So we're in the club, and long story short, the last thing I remember, which was at 1 a.m, was me holding a tequila rosé shot and drinking it, and I completely blacked out. Oh, diamonds! Perfect. And I completely blacked out. And I don't know what the term is, but I blacked back in. Like I started remembering things again at 6 a.m. outside the bus stop that I take back to my accommodation. Keep in mind, I was still very drunk. Oh, this is gonna be a 1 vein, isn't it? Don't tell me it's a 1 vein. Oh, okay. I mean, just a 2 vein ain't cool either. And because I couldn't remember anything, I was just like, okay, I'm at the bus stop, I might as well go home. So I get on the bus and I go take a seat. Once I sat down, I passed out immediately. I just fell asleep. And I got woken up to a dude tapping my shoulder saying, we're here. And I didn't even think about the fact how this random guy would have known where I'm trying to go and which stop I'm getting off at, but I just blindly said, yeah, you know what, sure. So I got off the bus. I looked around and I realized I was exactly where I started. I was so confused. I started thinking if I was dreaming earlier, but then I looked at my phone and the time now was 8:30. That meant I was on the bus for 2.5 hours, so I probably had a loop or two of the whole city and no one decided to wake me up. So I got back on the bus and made it my life mission to stay awake, and I succeeded. I stayed awake and waddled back to my accommodation drunk as hell. I had about 15 alarms set for 12 p.m. so I don't miss my train, so I wasn't worried at all. So when I woke up, I was like, oh, what the bro, this guy was trying to be sneaky. when I woke up, I thought I woke up before my alarm, and I was like, okay, perfect. I have more time to move out and catch my train. I checked my phone, and it was 2 minutes till my train leaves. So I completely missed that train, and I checked my notifications, and I had 15 missed calls from the friend I agreed to meet in London. I finally called him back, and I was like, my bad, bro. I missed the train, and I told him the whole story of how drunk I got. And he was just laughing and called me an idiot, which is fair. I was absolutely idiotic for what I did. He said he'll meet me at the train station, which was very nice of him, so I caught the next train and got to London, and I met my friend. I was super hungover at this point, but we went to go meet a few friends who live in London, and they said, you know what, it's your birthday tonight. My birthday was at midnight, so they were like, it's your birthday tonight, we're gonna go out drinking. And I told them how hungover I was, and I told them the story about the bus, and they were like, no, we don't care, we're gonna go out drinking. Again, I fell into peer pressure, and it was my birthday, so I said, you know what, let's go do something special. This night wasn't anything crazy, you know, I didn't drink too much, and I was fine. Drinking 2 days in a row definitely wasn't the play, because the hangover I had the next day was the worst hangover I probably have ever had. Actually, one cool thing from the night of my birthday was I got to meet Saul Poppy. If any of you know that, the guy that runs in the same spot on TikTok and just makes like facial expressions. I'm sure you know who Saul Poppy is. I met him at the club, which was cool, and I've got a photo with him. He was a pretty nice guy. And honestly, that wraps up both of my stories. I know this was a bit of a different one, so if you did end up enjoying it, please tell me in the comments, because I have so many stories like this and I would love to share them. Also, if you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and if you're still watching till now, you're definitely enjoying it, so you might as well click the video that just popped up. Or don't, it's obviously up to you. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great night. Peace.